He silenced all his notifications when he was with me until I synced his messages to our smart TV. The moment I saw her name flash across our 65-inch television screen, everything I thought I knew about my life shattered into a million pieces. There I was, sitting on our expensive leather couch, the one Marcus insisted we needed for our forever home, holding a bowl of popcorn that suddenly felt like a brick in my hands. The message was simple. Just 7 words that destroyed 5 years of what I believed was a perfect relationship. I miss you. When can I see you again? And then another one popped up. And another. A cascade of heart emojis, intimate photographs, and promises that made my stomach turn inside out. My husband was in the shower. I could hear him humming, actually humming, some song I didn't recognize. Happy, carefree. Completely unaware that his carefully constructed world of lies was currently being broadcasted on the same screen where we watched romantic comedies together every Sunday night. How did I get here? How did the woman who thought she had it all figured out end up discovering her husband's affair through a technology glitch? And more importantly, what I did in the next 72 hours would change everything, not just for me, but for everyone involved. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the woman I used to be before that night. The woman who trusted too much, loved too hard, and ignored every single red flag that was waving right in front of her face. I met Marcus Chen at a coffee shop in Seattle, and I know how cliché that sounds. It was one of those rainy Tuesday afternoons where the whole city seemed wrapped in gray, and I was huddled in a corner booth, laptop open, trying to meet a deadline for a marketing campaign that my boss had dumped on me at the last minute. I was 27 years old, freshly out of a relationship that had gone nowhere, and honestly, I wasn't looking for anything. I had sworn off dating apps, sworn off setups from well-meaning friends, sworn off the whole exhausting ritual of trying to find someone in a city where everyone seemed too busy chasing their tech startup dreams to actually connect. And then he appeared. Is this seat taken? I looked up, ready to give my standard polite but dismissive smile, and there he was, 6 feet tall, dark hair that fell perfectly across his forehead, and the kind of warm brown eyes that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He was holding a cup of coffee in one hand and a worn copy of a book I had just finished reading in the other. "That's my favorite book," I said, pointing at it before I could stop myself. He smiled, and I swear, something shifted in my chest. "Really? Most people think it's too dark." "I like dark," I said. "Real life is dark. Why pretend otherwise?" He sat down without waiting for an actual invitation, and we talked for 3 hours. 3 hours that flew by like minutes. He was a software engineer at a company I'd actually heard of, but he didn't lead with that. He led with his passion for hiking, his complicated relationship with his traditional Korean mother, his dream of one day writing a novel. "You're different," he said, as we finally gathered our things to leave. "Most women I meet here are so calculated, like they're running a cost-benefit analysis on every conversation. Maybe I'm just better at hiding it," I joked. He laughed, really laughed, and asked for my number. Looking back now, I should have noticed how smoothly that all went, how perfectly he seemed to know exactly what to say. But when you're lonely, and someone finally sees you, really sees you, you don't question the miracle, you just accept it. Our first year together was everything I had ever wanted. Marcus was attentive, romantic, the kind of boyfriend who remembered small details and turned them into thoughtful gestures. When I mentioned missing my grandmother's apple pie, he spent an entire weekend learning how to bake it from YouTube videos. When I got passed over for a promotion I deserved, he planned a weekend getaway to the coast, just the two of us, where he held me while I cried and told me I was worth more than any job. "You're my person," he would whisper against my hair. I've never felt this way about anyone. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He showed up, consistently, day after day. He introduced me to his friends, brought me to his family dinners, talked about our future like it was already written in stone. We moved in together after 18 months. A beautiful apartment in Capitol Hill with exposed brick walls and a view of the city that made my heart sing every morning. I remember standing in our empty living room, surrounded by boxes, feeling like my life had finally begun. "This is it," Marcus said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "This is where we start our forever." Forever. Such a dangerous word. The first red flag appeared about 6 months after we moved in together, but I didn't recognize it for what it was. I was too busy being in love, too busy building our life, too busy ignoring the tiny voice in the back of my head that whispered something wasn't quite right. It started with his phone. Marcus had always been attached to it. Everyone is these days. But I started noticing that he would flip it face down whenever I walked into the room. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Paranoid, insecure. All those things my mother always warned me about becoming. "Why do you always put your phone face down?" I asked one night, trying to keep my voice casual. He didn't even look up from his laptop. "Do I?" I didn't notice, just habit, I guess. Habit. Such a convenient word for behavior you don't want to explain. Then came the silenced notifications. I noticed it gradually, the way you notice the seasons changing. One day, his phone would buzz and light up constantly. The next it was always on silent. Always. "Don't you want to check that?" I'd ask when I knew his phone was blowing up in his pocket. "It's just work stuff," he'd say with a dismissive wave. "I'm with you. Work can wait." I actually thought it was sweet at first. Can you imagine? I thought my boyfriend silencing his phone meant he was prioritizing me. I told my friends about it, bragged about how present he was, how he never let technology interrupt our time together. "You're so lucky," my best friend Sarah said. "Most guys are glued to their screens." Lucky. If only I knew. The proposal came on our 3-year anniversary. A candlelit dinner at the restaurant where we had our first official date, a speech that made me cry, a ring that sparkled under the dim lighting like a promise of everything good to come. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you," Marcus said, down on one knee, his eyes glistening with what I believed were genuine tears. "You're my best friend, my partner, my home. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he even finished the question. The wedding planning consumed the next year of my life. I threw myself into it completely. The venue, the flowers, the dress, the guest list, the seating charts, all of it. Marcus was supportive in that way. Men often are during wedding planning, nodding at the right moments, writing checks without complaint, showing up when required. "Whatever makes you happy," he'd say whenever I asked for his opinion. "This is your day." I thought he was being generous. Now I understand he was being absent. There's a difference. We got married on a perfect September afternoon at a vineyard in Woodinville. 200 guests, a 12-piece band, a custom wedding cake that cost more than my first car. My mother cried. His mother smiled her tight-lipped smile that never quite reached her eyes. Our friends danced until midnight. It was the happiest day of my life. And it was built on lies I couldn't even begin to imagine. The first year of marriage was good, not perfect. No marriage is, but good. We settled into a routine that felt comfortable, predictable in the best way. Saturday morning farmers markets, Sunday dinners with friends, Wednesday date nights that we protected fiercely from work obligations. We bought a house in our second year of marriage, a Craftsman in Ballard, with a big backyard and a renovated kitchen where I imagined teaching our future children to cook. Marcus handled most of the technology setup. He was the engineer, after all, including installing a fancy smart home system that connected everything. "Welcome to the future," he said proudly, showing me how the lights, thermostat, and television could all be controlled from our phones. I even set up screen mirroring so we can share photos and videos on the TV directly. "That's amazing," I said, not really understanding any of it. "You're so good at this stuff." He kissed my forehead. "I just want to make our home perfect." Perfect. Another dangerous word. It was around our 3rd anniversary that I started noticing more changes. Subtle things that individually meant nothing, but together formed a pattern I was too afraid to examine closely. Marcus started working late more often. "Big project," he'd explain. "The team is under pressure." He joined a gym, something he'd never shown interest in before. "Just trying to stay healthy," he said when I raised an eyebrow. He became obsessive about his appearance. New clothes, A different cologne, more attention paid to his hair in the morning mirror. "You seem different lately," I said one night over dinner. "Different how?" "I don't know. More distracted. Like your mind is always somewhere else." He reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry, babe. Work has just been crazy. I promise I'll be more present." And he was, for about a week. Then the pattern resumed. I started doing things I'm not proud of. Checking his location on Find My Friends, something he'd insisted we set up for safety. He was always where he said he would be. The office, the gym, the occasional happy hour with colleagues. Nothing suspicious, nothing concrete. But the phone, the damn phone, was always silent when he was home, always face down, always just out of my reach. "Why don't you ever text me during the day anymore?" I asked once. "I do text you. Not like you used to. Remember when you'd send me random thoughts throughout the day? Jokes? Songs that made you think of me?" He shrugged. "I guess I'm just busier now. Doesn't mean I love you any less." But it felt like less. It felt like slowly losing something precious, watching it slip through my fingers grain by grain, too subtle to grab but too painful to ignore. I talked to Sarah about it over wine one night, my words tumbling out in a rush of anxiety and self-doubt. "You're overthinking it," she said, refilling my glass. "Men get comfortable after marriage. They stop trying as hard. Doesn't mean anything's wrong." "But what if something is wrong? Then you'd know. Trust me, you'd know." The thing is, she was right. On some level, I did know. I had known for months, maybe longer. But knowing something and accepting it are two very different things. I wasn't ready to accept that the man I'd built my life around might not be who I thought he was. So I did what I'd been doing our entire relationship. I ignored the voice, silenced my own doubts, and kept moving forward. Until that night changed everything. It was a Friday evening in March. We had been married for 4 years, together for almost 6. I had come home early from work with a headache and decided to take a warm bath and spend the evening in my pajamas, watching something mindless on television. Marcus was in his home office when I got home, on a video call with what he said was his development team. "I'll be done in an hour," he promised, kissing my cheek without really looking at me. "Sure," I said. "I'll just rest." I took my bath, feeling the tension in my shoulders slowly release. Maybe I had been overthinking everything. Maybe Sarah was right, and marriage just settled into something less exciting, but no less loving over time. Maybe I needed to stop looking for problems where there weren't any. I wrapped myself in my robe and went downstairs to the living room, grabbing a blanket from the closet and settling onto the couch. I picked up the remote and turned on the television, planning to find some cooking show to half-watch while I recovered from my headache. But the screen that appeared wasn't Netflix or YouTube or any of our usual streaming services. It was a text message interface. I stared at it for a moment, confused. The screen was showing what looked like someone's phone messages, but bigger, spread across our entire 65-inch television. I could see the conversation as clearly as if I were holding the phone myself. And then I saw the name at the top, Sophia, and then I read the messages. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? I miss your hands on me." My heart stopped. I'm not being dramatic. I genuinely felt it. Stop, pause, skip a beat that made me gasp for air. This wasn't possible. There had to be some explanation. Maybe it was a wrong number, a spam message, something that would make sense if I just... Another message appeared on the screen in real time. "My wife is home, can't talk. But I'll dream about you tonight." My wife is home, Marcus's message. From his phone, synced to our television through the smart home system he had set up himself. I sat there frozen, watching as more messages loaded, a history of betrayal scrolling across the screen like the world's worst movie. Photographs I couldn't unsee, promises that echoed the ones he'd made to me, plans for hotel rooms, lunch dates, weekends when he'd told me he was at work conferences. The affair had been going on for almost 2 years. 2 years, 730 days of lies, of looking me in the eyes and telling me he loved me while someone else was waiting for his messages. 2 years of silenced notifications and face-down phones and big projects at work. I heard the shower turn on upstairs. Marcus must have finished his call and was getting cleaned up before dinner. Cleaned up. The irony almost made me laugh. I should have been crying. I should have been screaming, storming upstairs, throwing things, demanding explanations. That's what happens in movies, right? The betrayed wife goes into a rage, confronts the cheating husband, and either walks out or fights for her marriage. But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I did something that would surprise even me. I started taking photographs. My phone was in my hand before I consciously decided to reach for it. I photographed every message on the screen, every photograph, every damning piece of evidence scrolling past. Dates, times, locations, names, everything. Then I heard the shower turn off. I quickly pressed buttons on the remote until the television switched to Netflix. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the remote steady, but I managed to pull up some random documentary before Marcus came downstairs. "Thai food?" he asked, toweling his hair dry. "I'm thinking yellow curry tonight." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. The man I had loved for 6 years, the man I had married and built a home with, was someone I didn't know at all. "Sure," I heard myself say. "Yellow curry sounds good." He smiled, that warm smile that used to make my heart flutter. Now it just made my stomach turn. "You okay? You look pale." "Just the headache," I said. "I think I'll go to bed early after we eat." "Good idea. Rest up." He kissed my forehead, the same way he had kissed it 1,000 times before, and went to order our food. I sat on the couch, surrounded by the silence of my crumbling world, and began to plan. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I didn't confront Marcus immediately, even though every cell in my body screamed at me to do exactly that. But I had seen enough movies, read enough articles, talked to enough divorced friends to know that emotional reactions in the moment rarely led to good outcomes. I needed to be strategic. I needed to be smart. I needed to protect myself. The first thing I did was consult a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best divorce attorney in Seattle, a woman named Patricia Reyes, who had a reputation for getting her female clients exactly what they deserved. "I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet," I told her in her corner office overlooking the city, "but I need to know my options." Patricia was in her 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who had clearly seen every possible iteration of marital betrayal. "Smart," she said, sliding a pad of paper across the desk. "Tell me everything." I did. I showed her the photographs I had taken from the television screen, explained the timeline, shared my suspicions about how long this had been going on. "Washington is a community property state," Patricia explained. "That means everything acquired during the marriage is split 50-50, regardless of who's at fault. However, having documented evidence of infidelity can influence how other matters are handled, spousal support, for instance, and if there's any financial impropriety, affairs cost money. Hotels, gifts, trips. If your husband has been spending marital funds on his mistress without your knowledge or consent, that's something we can work with." I hadn't even thought about the money. I had been so focused on the emotional betrayal that the practical implications hadn't registered. "What do you recommend I do?" Patricia leaned back in her chair. "Gather information. Don't let him know you know, not yet. Check bank statements, credit card bills, anything that shows where money has been going. Document everything, and most importantly, start separating your finances quietly. Open accounts in your name only. Redirect your paychecks. Protect yourself." "How long should I wait before confronting him?" "That depends on you. Some women need closure immediately. Others prefer to wait until they have all the pieces in place. There's no wrong answer, only the answer that's right for you." I left her office with a retainer agreement signed and a to-do list that made my head spin. Over the next week, I became a detective in my own marriage. I waited until Marcus left for work, or wherever he actually went during the day, and then I went through everything. The credit card statements told a story that made me sick. Expensive restaurants I had never heard of, Hotel charges for nights he'd told me he was working late. Jewelry purchases that had never appeared in our home. He had bought her jewelry with our money. I found receipts for weekend trips to Portland, Vancouver, even a 5-night stay in San Francisco during what he'd told me was a work conference. The conference was only 3 days, I whispered to myself, staring at the hotel bill. You were there for 5. 2 extra days with her, while I sat at home wondering why he never called as much as he used to when he traveled. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. He had a second credit card I didn't know about, one that had been open for almost 18 months. The charges painted a picture of an entire parallel life: lunches, dinners, concerts, gifts, hotel rooms, all for a woman named Sophia Chen. Chen. The same last name as Marcus. My blood ran cold. I searched for her online and found her immediately. Sophia Chen, 28 years old, junior software engineer at Wait For It, Marcus's company. She was beautiful, of course. Long, dark hair, bright smile, the kind of effortless confidence that comes from youth and not yet having been destroyed by life. And according to LinkedIn, she had started at the company exactly 2 years ago. The same timeline as the affair. He had started sleeping with her almost immediately, probably seduced her the same way he had seduced me. The charm, the attention, the feeling of being truly seen. I wondered if he put his phone face down when he was with her too. The final piece of the puzzle came from the most unexpected source. His mother. I had always had a complicated relationship with Marcus's mother, Linda. She was the kind of woman who never said anything directly critical, but made her disapproval known through raised eyebrows and loaded silences. I was never quite Korean enough, quite successful enough, quite anything enough for her precious only son. But we maintained a polite relationship for Marcus's sake, which included occasional lunches when she was in town visiting from California. It was during one of these lunches, about 10 days after my television discovery, that she said something that stopped me cold. "I'm glad Marcus seems happier lately," Linda said, sipping her tea. "He was so stressed for a while there." Happier? More relaxed. More like himself. I worried about him, after the promotion didn't come through, but he seems to have found his balance again. I set down my fork. "What promotion?" Linda looked at me strangely. "The director position, the one he was passed over for last spring. He didn't tell you." Marcus had never mentioned being passed over for anything. As far as I knew, his career was going exactly as planned. "He probably didn't want to worry you," Linda continued, completely unaware of the bomb she had just dropped. "He's always been proud, doesn't like to admit when things don't go his way." I smiled and nodded and somehow made it through the rest of lunch, but my mind was racing. What else had he lied about? What else didn't I know about the man I had married? That night I waited until Marcus was asleep and then checked his email. I know. Snooping is wrong, a violation of privacy, a betrayal of trust, but he had already betrayed every trust that mattered, and I was done playing by rules that only I seemed to follow. His inbox was carefully curated. Nothing suspicious, but his deleted folder told a different story. Emails from HR about performance issues. Messages from his therapist, a therapist I didn't know he was seeing, and buried deep, a chain of emails about a reduction in force that had nearly affected his position. Marcus had almost been laid off 6 months ago. He had never said a word. The man I married was a stranger who smiled at me over breakfast, slept beside me every night, and lied as easily as he breathed. I had all the information I needed. Now it was time to decide what to do with it. The confrontation didn't happen the way I had imagined it 100 times in my head. I had pictured screaming, crying, dramatic declarations, and slammed doors. Instead, it was quiet, devastatingly, surgically quiet. It was a Sunday morning, 3 weeks after that night, with the television. We were having breakfast at our kitchen table, the one where we'd shared 1,000 meals, where we'd talked about our days and planned our futures, and built what I thought was a life. Marcus was reading something on his phone, probably texting her, I realized now when I set down my coffee cup and spoke. "I know about Sophia." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's face went through a series of expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, fear. and finally something that looked almost like relief. What are you talking about? I saw the messages, Marcus. All of them. 3 weeks ago. Your phone synced to the television while you were in the shower. He set down his phone. His hands were shaking. Elena, I can explain. Can you explain? 2 years of lies. Can you explain the hotels, the gifts, the trips? Can you explain buying her jewelry with our money? His face went pale. You went through our finances. I went through everything. Every email, every statement, every receipt you thought you had hidden. I know about the promotion you didn't get. I know about the performance issues. I know about the therapy. I know about all of it. Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I've already spoken to a lawyer, I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm filing for divorce. Elena, please. We can work through this. I'll end it with her. I'll go to counseling. I'll do whatever. You've been sleeping with another woman for 2 years. 2 years, Marcus. Half our marriage. There's nothing to work through. He started to cry then, tears streaming down his face, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt sorry for him. The man I had loved for 6 years, broken and begging at our breakfast table. But then I remembered the messages. The photographs. The lies upon lies upon lies. I loved you, I said, standing up. I loved you so much that I ignored every red flag, every warning sign, every instinct that told me something was wrong. I made myself smaller to fit into your version of our life. And this is what you did with that love. Elena, I'm staying with Sarah until I find a place. My lawyer will be in touch about the details. Please don't contact me unless it's absolutely necessary. I walked out of our kitchen, out of our house, out of the life I had spent 6 years building. And I didn't look back. The divorce took 8 months. 8 months of legal negotiations, financial untangling, and emotional devastation. Patricia was worth every penny of her substantial fees. She discovered that Marcus had been hiding even more than I had found, offshore accounts, where he'd been stashing bonuses, stocks that weren't disclosed in our original financial agreements, even a small inheritance from his grandmother that he'd never mentioned. He's been preparing for a potential divorce for at least a year, Patricia told me during one of our meetings. These kinds of financial arrangements don't happen overnight. He knew this might end and wanted to protect himself. The irony was almost laughable. While I was lying in bed wondering why my husband seemed distant, he was meeting with financial advisors to hide assets from me. In the end, I got the house. I got more than half of the visible assets, plus a substantial settlement when the hidden accounts were discovered. Marcus's attempt to protect himself ended up costing him far more than a straightforward divorce would have. And Sophia? She broke up with him 3 months into the divorce proceedings. I learned this from a mutual friend, someone who worked at the same company and had watched the whole scandal unfold. She didn't sign up for this, the friend told me. She thought he was going to leave you, and they'd live happily ever after. When she realized he'd been lying to her too, telling her the divorce was his idea, that you were the one who was distant, she wanted nothing to do with him. Marcus had been lying to both of us, playing both sides, telling each woman what she wanted to hear, never intending to actually change anything. In a way, Sophia was a victim too. Not as much as me. She knew he was married, made that choice, but she had also believed his lies, built hopes on his promises. I didn't feel sorry for her. Exactly, but I didn't hate her as much as I thought I would. The one I hated was Marcus, and even that faded over time, replaced by something worse. Pity. I ran into him about a year after the divorce was finalized. I was at a coffee shop, different from the one where we met, but similar enough, working on my laptop when he walked in. He looked terrible. Thinner, paler, with dark circles under his eyes that spoke to many sleepless nights. Elena, he said, stopping at my table, I didn't expect to see you here. Hello, Marcus. There was an awkward pause. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, clearly wanting to say something but unsure how to begin. How are you? He finally asked. I'm good. Really good, actually. And I was. It had taken time, therapy, support from friends, long nights of crying and questioning, and slowly rebuilding, but I was genuinely good. Better than I had been in years. Maybe ever. That's good. I'm glad. Another pause. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For everything I know that doesn't help, and I know you probably don't care, but I needed to say it. What I did was unforgivable, and I have to live with that. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly, but release. The last threads of anger and pain that had been tethering me to our failed marriage finally loosening. Thank you for saying that, I said. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Marcus. I genuinely do. He nodded, his eyes glistening, and walked away. I went back to my laptop, back to my work, back to the life I had built from the ashes of the one he destroyed. It's been 3 years since that night with the television. 3 years since 7 words on a screen changed everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and myself. I'm different now, stronger in some ways, more cautious in others. I've learned to trust my instincts, to not ignore the voice that whispers when something isn't right. I've learned that love isn't enough if it's not accompanied by honesty, respect, and genuine partnership. I've also learned that I'm capable of more than I ever imagined. Building a new life from scratch at 33 isn't easy, but I did it. New apartment, new job, new friends, new possibilities. And yes, there's someone new. A man named David who I met through hiking. Ironic, given that hiking was one of the things that first attracted me to Marcus. But David is different. Open, transparent, the kind of man who leaves his phone face up on the table and actually wants me to see his messages. I have nothing to hide, he told me on our 3rd date. That's always been my policy. If I'm with someone, I'm with them completely. I didn't tell him then about Marcus, about the affair, about any of it. That story came later, once we had built enough trust for me to share that vulnerability. His response was everything I needed to hear. I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, he said, holding my hand across a restaurant table. But I can promise I'll never lie to you. About anything. If something's wrong, we'll face it together. If I have doubts, I'll tell you. If you have concerns, I want to hear them. That's how relationships should work. It was so simple, so basic, and yet hearing it felt revolutionary after years of walking on eggshells, of silenced notifications and face-down phones, and the constant, gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. I don't know if David is my forever. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I've learned not to be so certain about things that can't be predicted. But I know that I deserve honesty. I deserve transparency. I deserve a partner who chooses me, fully and completely, every single day. And if that never comes, if David and I don't work out, if I end up alone, that's okay too, because the most important relationship I've built in these 3 years is the one with myself. I know who I am now. I know my worth. I know that I would rather be alone than be with someone who makes me feel like I'm constantly reaching for something just out of grasp. To anyone out there who's seeing the red flags and ignoring them, trust yourself. That voice in the back of your head, the one that whispers that something isn't right. She knows. She always knows. And to anyone who's been where I was, sitting on a couch, watching their world collapse in real time, you will survive this. It doesn't feel like it now. It feels like you'll never breathe normally again, never trust again, never love again. But you will. I promise you will. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually the beginning of our best chapters. The night I saw those messages on our television, it was the night I lost my marriage, but it was also the night I started finding myself. That stupid smart TV, with its automatic syncing and its glitchy settings that Marcus didn't quite configure correctly, it gave me the truth he never would have offered willingly. And the truth, as painful as it was, set me free. So thank you, Marcus. Thank you for the 6 years, the lessons, the heartbreak that taught me how strong I really am. Thank you for Sophia, who showed me what you were capable of, and for the hidden accounts that funded my fresh start. Thank you for all of it. Because without you breaking me, I never would have learned how to rebuild myself into something better. If I could go back and give advice to the woman I was before that night, there's so much I would want to say. I would tell her to stop making excuses for behavior that hurts her. That silenced notifications aren't a sign of devotion, they're a sign of secrets. That face-down phones and late nights and sudden interest in the gym are all chapters of a story she doesn't want to read but needs to. I would tell her that being alone is not the worst thing that can happen. That staying in a marriage built on lies is far lonelier than any empty apartment. I would tell her that her instincts are not paranoia, that the voice inside her head is trying to protect her, not sabotage her happiness. But mostly, I would tell her this: you are enough. You have always been enough. The right person won't make you question that. The right person won't silence their phone because they have something to hide. The right person will hand you their unlocked phone and say, "See, nothing but boring work emails and that meme I was trying to remember to show you." The right person will make you feel secure, not suspicious. I deserve that. You deserve that. We all deserve that. And if we don't have it, we have the power to leave. We have the strength to start over. We have the courage to choose ourselves, even when it's terrifying. That night in March, watching messages scroll across my television screen, I thought my life was over. But it was only beginning. Last week, I received a text from an unknown number. For a moment my heart stopped. Thrown back to that night, when unexpected messages changed everything. But it wasn't Marcus. It wasn't Sophia. It wasn't anyone from that chapter of my life at all. It was a woman named Jennifer, someone who had found me through mutual friends and wanted to know if we could talk. Her husband, she explained, had been acting strange lately, silencing his phone, working late, coming home smelling different. She didn't want to be paranoid. She loved him. But something felt off. "I heard what happened to you," her message said. "I heard how you handled it. I was hoping you could tell me what to do." I sat with that message for a long time before responding. What do you say to someone standing at the beginning of a journey you've already completed? How do you compress years of pain and healing and growth into advice that fits in a text message? In the end, I kept it simple. "Trust yourself," I wrote. "Trust that voice inside you, and know that whatever you find, whatever happens, you're strong enough to handle it." I didn't believe that about myself until I had to prove it. But it was true. It's true for you too. She responded with a thank you and a promise to reach out if she needed support. I haven't heard from her since. I hope that means everything was fine, that her husband's strange behavior had an innocent explanation, that her marriage is strong, that my story was just a cautionary tale she didn't need. But if it wasn't, if she's sitting somewhere right now, watching her world collapse the way mine did, I hope she knows she's not alone. I hope she knows that the end of one story is just the beginning of another. I hope she knows that the pain is temporary, but the strength she discovers in herself will last forever. Because that's the truth. Nobody tells you about betrayal. It breaks you, yes. But broken things can be rebuilt. And sometimes, what rises from the ashes is more beautiful than what stood before. I'm living proof of that. So here's to the late nights and early mornings. Here's to the tears that felt like they'd never stop, and the laughter that eventually returned. Here's to the friends who held us up, and the strangers who shared their stories. Here's to the lawyers who fought for us, and the therapists who guided us back to ourselves. Here's to every woman who has ever sat in the dark, clutching her phone, wondering if she's crazy, or if her instincts are trying to tell her something. You're not crazy. You're paying attention. Trust that. Trust yourself. And know that no matter what happens next, you're going to be okay. Better than okay. You're going to be magnificent. I still have that television, by the way. The 65-inch one that changed my life. David asked once why I didn't get rid of it, why I kept a reminder of the worst night of my life in my living room. I thought about it for a moment before answering. "Because it reminds me," I said. "Reminds you of what?" I looked at the screen, dark and quiet, no messages scrolling across its surface. That the truth always finds a way out, and that sometimes the things that hurt us the most are also the things that set us free. He didn't entirely understand, how could he, but he accepted it. That's one of the things I love about him. He doesn't need to understand everything. He just needs to accept me as I am, complicated history and all. So the television stays, a monument to my worst moment, a reminder of my greatest strength. And every time I turn it on, just for a second, I remember the woman I was before that night and the woman I became after. I like who I became. I like her a lot. Some stories don't have happy endings. Some marriages can't be saved. Some trust, once broken, can never be rebuilt. But this isn't a story about an ending. It's a story about a beginning. The beginning of understanding what I'm worth. The beginning of demanding what I deserve. The beginning of a life built on truth instead of comfortable lies. If you're in the middle of your own story right now, not sure how it's going to end, let me tell you something. You're stronger than you know. Whatever happens, you will survive it. And on the other side, there's a version of yourself waiting, wiser, braver, more authentically you than you've ever been. She's waiting. Go find her. I found mine on a random Friday night, watching her husband's affair scroll across a television screen, surrounded by the wreckage of everything she thought she knew. And she became me. This me, the me that's finally, completely, unapologetically free.